Imagine a world drowning in chaos, where wrong seems to outweigh right at every turn. This time, filled with so much wrongdoing, was the backdrop for an incredible story that has been told for generations. Amid all the noise and mess of a world gone off track, a man named Noah stood out. He was like a steady light in a dark room, living right and true in a time when most people had forgotten how to. It was a moment in history that couldn't go on as it was, a point where something big had to happen. Noah, with his strong faith and good heart, was the one chosen for a huge task, something no one had ever done before, all while everything around him was about to change in a big way. That day, the sky looked the same as it always did, a wide stretch of blue. But what came from it was far from normal. God spoke to Noah with a message that was serious, but also had a bit of hope tucked inside. The world was too full of badness to keep going like this. A huge flood was on its way, one so big and strong it would wash away all the evil. Noah and his family, though, would be safe. They had a big job ahead that would really show how strong their faith was. God told them exactly what to do. Build an ark, a huge boat made of gopher wood and sealed with pitch. This ark would be a safe place for Noah, his family, and 2 of every kind of animal, keeping them alive for a fresh start. Think about how big of a deal this was for Noah. He was living in times when people didn't care much about doing what was right, but he was picked to save life itself. It was a huge task, not just the work of building the ark, but believing in something so big and unheard of. People were likely to laugh at him, or not believe him. But Noah, with a strong heart full of faith, got started. Building the ark wasn't just about following orders. It showed Noah's deep trust in God. Noah had a job like no one had ever seen before. He was supposed to build an ark, a massive boat that was longer and bigger than anything around, big enough to hold 2 of every kind of animal. God gave him the plans, but Noah and his sons had to do the actual building. They had to find tons of wood and pitch and get all sorts of tools and supplies ready. The ark wasn't just big, it was supposed to float through the worst flood ever and keep everyone and everything on it safe. While working hard on this huge project, Noah's family had to deal with people doubting them and the big challenge of just how to pull it all off. They had to be careful with every piece of wood and every nail. But doing all this work was also a kind of spiritual journey for them. The ark was more than a boat. It was a sign of hope, a connection between God and people at a time when everything seemed to be falling apart. Building the ark was like putting their faith into something you can touch and see. Despite everyone else not believing, Noah's commitment showed how much he trusted in something bigger than himself. It was all about faith, about believing in something you can't see, made real right in front of them. In these first parts of Noah's story, we're asked to think about what we believe in and how far we'd go to stand by those beliefs. The story of Noah's Ark, with its huge size and important mission, really shows us how strong faith can be and how tough people are when things get really hard. As the ark was almost ready, Noah's job took on a whole new level. Now, it was time to bring on board animals of every kind, a task so big it was clear only a miracle could make it happen. Noah had to gather 2 of every animal, from tiny bugs to giant elephants, all guided by a force they couldn't see. Picture this: animals lining up 2 by 2, making their way through the wild to get to the ark. Elephants, lions, birds of all sorts, all heading to this huge boat. It was a sight like no other, showing just how amazing and varied life on earth is, and now it was Noah's job to look after all these creatures. Taking care of so many different animals was a huge challenge. Noah and his family had to figure out how to feed them, give them water, and make sure they all had enough space. But even with all the hard work, there must have been moments when they just had to stop and marvel at the incredible mix of life they were sailing with, feeling a deep connection to every living thing. When the last animal got on board and everything was set, the sky started to look different. A light rain quickly turned into a huge downpour, the likes of which nobody had ever seen. Outside the ark, the world changed fast. Little streams became big rivers, and valleys got swallowed up by rising waters. The rain didn't stop for 40 days and nights, sweeping away everything that used to be. Inside the ark, Noah's family and all the animals were cut off from the rest of the world, floating on what seemed like an endless ocean. Being so isolated, knowing the kind of destruction that was happening outside, must have been really hard to handle. But even with all that, the ark was full of life, a small version of the world outside, keeping on amidst all the turmoil. This part of Noah's story really makes us think about starting over after everything's been wiped away. The flood did wipe the slate clean, but it was also the first step towards a new start. It's a powerful reminder of how strong nature is and how tough we have to be when faced with its biggest challenges. Inside the ark, life settled into its own pattern. Looking after the animals, taking care of the ark, and living so close together made Noah's family and their animal guests into a kind of floating community. Every day came with its own set of jobs, from feeding a boatload of animals to dealing with all the waste and making sure everyone got along. But even with all the hard work, there were special moments too. Moments of real beauty and togetherness. The ark was more than just a safe place from the flood. It was a home for all kinds of life, showing that different creatures could live in peace even when the world outside was falling apart. As the floodwater started to go down, everyone on the ark began to wonder about what was waiting for them out there. The earth they were going to step back onto was like a clean slate, ready for a fresh start. The story of their time on the ark isn't just about getting through tough times. It's about how life keeps going, filled with hope and strength no matter what. This part of Noah's story teaches us more than just about how he survived a flood. It's about taking care of each other and our world, having faith even when things look bad, and the amazing ability of life to keep moving forward, ready to face new challenges. When the storm finally stopped and the skies cleared, the ark rested on a quiet, endless sea. Noah, always on the lookout, began searching for any sign of life outside their floating home. The dropping water levels started a period of waiting, testing their patience and faith in the hope of a world made new. Hoping for news of land, Noah sent out a raven, followed by a dove. The raven came back, having found nowhere to land, showing the earth was still underwater. The dove came back too, but on its second trip, it brought an olive leaf, a small sign of life and the water going down. This little leaf was more than just proof that land was out there. It was a message of new beginnings and hope, showing that life goes on even after everything. When the dove was sent out again and didn't return, Noah knew it was time to get ready to leave the ark. This act of sending the birds out and waiting for them to come back tells us a lot about how Noah felt about the earth and God. It shows a big respect for the natural world and a deep trust in God's timing and care. After a long journey, the ark finally settled on the mountains of Ararat. When Noah, his family, and all the animals stepped out, they entered a world that was clean and different from what they knew, yet strangely familiar. Their first steps were careful, filled with wonder, thankfulness, and a sense of big responsibility for taking care of this fresh start. Noah's first job was to build an altar to thank God for keeping them safe and to honor the promise they had with him. It was a time to think deeply about everything they had been through and what was coming next. In return, God blessed Noah and his sons, promising that he would never again send a flood to destroy the earth. A rainbow appeared, a colorful sign of the promise between God and every living creature that a flood would never again wipe out the earth. This rainbow was more than just a beautiful sight. It was a reminder of hope and starting over, a symbol that would mean peace and a fresh start for everyone, everywhere, for all time. Noah's story doesn't just end with everyone getting off the ark. It goes on to talk about how the earth was filled with people again, how new rules for living were set up, and how Noah's family kept the promise to God alive. But the real takeaway from Noah's story is much bigger than just these events. It teaches us deep lessons about having faith, following what's right, and the incredible ability of life to keep going. Noah, standing strong and good in a world that had lost its way, showed trust in what God promised him and took seriously his role in caring for all of creation. His story makes us think about how we treat each other and our planet, highlighting the power of starting over, making things right, and always holding on to hope, no matter how tough things get. Looking at our world today, Noah's Ark tells us a lot about taking care of our environment, how important every form of life is, and how we need each other to face big challenges. It reminds us that staying hopeful and keeping faith can lead us through uncertain times and bring about new beginnings, even after everything seems lost. The story of Noah's Ark, told in a way that brings new life to its timeless lessons, is ultimately about faith, the power to bounce back, and the ever-present chance for a fresh start. It reminds us that no matter how dark the days get, there's always a spark of hope and the opportunity for change. As we face our own set of challenges today, the story of Noah's Ark holds valuable insights, encouraging us to protect what we have, keep faith in the midst of uncertainty, and always hold on to the hope of a brighter future.